Hello and welcome to today's webinar presented by Accountants World. Joining us today is Tyler Winn, and he'll be talking about 6 steps to grow a high margin payroll practice. We are about 4 to 5 minutes away from starting here at the top of the hour. Just wanted to remind you, if you haven't yet downloaded Tyler's presentation, there's a PDF file under the Handouts tab on the GoToWebinar control panel. So go look for the Handouts tab. You'll see a PDF file under there, and you can go ahead and download that to follow along with us. And if your audio isn't coming through well, you can switch between computer audio and phone call by going to the audio tab and just select the. And joining us today is Tyler Winn, CPA. He runs Cirrus Payroll. You see their logo over in the bottom right there. And he's going to be talking today about how he's grown a high margin payroll practice and 6 steps that you can take to be able to achieve the sorts of results that he's achieving as well. So once again, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. We are incredibly excited to have Tyler back with us. Some of you may know that he did a webinar with us a year ago, and the response to that was phenomenal. People had lots of questions for him during the webinar and afterwards as well, and so we definitely wanted to bring him back to talk a little bit about where his practice is advanced to and some of the lessons and techniques that he's employed along the way as well. So very excited to have him with us today. Just a couple of quick housekeeping items before we go ahead and get started. If you need to see your settings in the GoToWebinar control panel, you can look for an orange arrow to expand and hide the panel at any time. If you want to change your audio options from computer to phone or vice versa, just go to the audio tab and you'll see both options in there. If you select phone, it will give you a dial-in number and an access code there. Tyler's presentation is available. The presentation that we're going to be going through today is available as a handout. So if you go under the Handouts tab, you're going to see Tyler's PDF file in there. And finally, if you have any questions for Tyler or for myself or Payroll Relief as we go through today's webinar, feel free to ask at any time. Just type in a question, make sure to hit send, and it'll come through to us, and one of us will answer it, or I'll ask Tyler whenever we get a chance throughout the presentation or at the end of the presentation. We are offering 1 CP for today's webinar, and that's based on active participation during the live presentation. So active participation means attending the live webinar for no less than 50 minutes, responding to all of the polling questions during the webinar, and then there'll be a post-webinar survey as well, so filling that out as well. For those of you who signed up through Accountants World, we will notify you by email about the CP. That'll probably be early next week. For those of you who signed up through CPA Academy will continue to handle the CP process just like they normally do. So no change for you folks coming in from there. So we're going to cover a lot with Tyler at this point. I'm going to introduce him in just a minute. Some of the main things that he'll be talking about: his background, why he believes that payroll can be a great business if you do it right, and how important it is to do it really right in terms of processes, the state of his practice right now, how his marketing approach has evolved over time, the power of customer reviews and how he's been able to unleash that, using staff as a competitive advantage rather than as a limitation, how his role has evolved over time, why he chose Payroll Relief as his payroll processing solution and how he's getting the most out of it, specific features and functions that he relies on to really get the most out of his practice, and obviously a Q&A throughout this presentation. We don't need to wait for the end to go through a Q&A. So before we get started and bring Tyler in here, I wanted to just ask a first poll question just to get a sense of who's joining us today. And so you should see the first poll question up in front of you. And so the question is simply, how many live payroll clients do you run payroll for? 1 to 5, 6 to 15, 15 to 25, more than 25, or I do not currently process live payroll. So if you can go ahead and fill that out, And just a reminder that this is the first of our poll questions today. Voting in the poll questions is required in order to earn CPE credit. All right, and it looks like most of you have voted at this point. Thank you. We'll take just a few more seconds here for those of you who have not yet voted. So if you'd like to receive CP today, please make sure to fill out this poll. All right, we are going once, going twice. Okay, great. Thank you. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce Tyler Winn at this point. Tyler, are you there with us?
I am. Hey, Dave.
Hey, Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
Great. So Tyler, it looks like we've got 26% of folks who don't currently process live payroll, but out of the rest of the group, 26% have 1 to 5 payroll clients. But we've got pretty good diversity here. We've got 21% who have more than 25 employers that they're processing for as well. So we can keep that in mind as we go through the agenda here. But let's go ahead and start out with a little bit of background for those of you, for those of the attendees who have not met you before or seen you at a previous webinar. Tell us a little bit about yourself and sort of how you got to this point with Cirrus Payroll.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, first of all, hopefully it's really interesting that about a quarter of the people on the webinar don't process any payroll at all. So I really hope to, inspire and show the opportunity here and maybe get some more people into the business because I really believe it's an awesome opportunity. So my background is it has always been in accounting. I got my degree in accounting, got recruited by Deloitte, and did the public accounting auditor thing for 4 or 5 years, and had the itch to get out and start my own business. This was back in 2011. And initially thought, I want to start a business. I'm a CPA. I should start a CPA firm. Just seemed natural. So I, started doing that. And I can talk about this a little bit later, but kind of stumbled into payroll, and took me about a year to figure out that payroll is what I wanted to do for a variety of reasons. And just went all in on it and have been doing that ever since. So about 6 years in the payroll industry. I'm based in Tulsa, Oklahoma, but we are serving clients in, I think, close to 40 states at this point. I'm hoping in the next couple of years we'll hit all 50. But so we've got kind of nationwide impact. But yeah, we're based in Tulsa here.
That's great. That's great. I think that leads us naturally into the next part, which is your decision-making process on focusing on payroll. When you were in a CPA practice, what were some of the things that you saw that made you think that might not be the direction that you wanted to go in? In other words, why not do tax work, accounting work, audit work, either in addition to or instead of your payroll work?
Yeah, so I started out doing outsourced bookkeeping. It seemed like a natural, easy way to start building out my own firm. And then my goal was to eventually hire on a tax person, maybe do some audit work, some consulting. But honestly, it's kind of funny. At first, I never even considered doing payroll. I actually had my accounting clients were using paychecks at first, and I was totally fine with that. Until I saw the actual experiences that they were having. So, what actually happened was a couple of my restaurant clients were working with paychecks and just were not having a great experience, and asked me if, since I'm doing the bookkeeping, why don't you just do the payroll? So I agreed to try it out and kind of fell in love with it. And I eventually just decided, payroll, I think I just want to do this. And the reason is that it was really for kind of entrepreneurial and, I guess, scalability type reasons. I saw that there was a huge opportunity in payroll because it is a sort of repeating process. You've got a lot of deadlines. You can build a whole system around just this one service and really you can really grow it big. I think, a lot faster than I felt like I could grow my accounting or tax or anything like that. So it was kind of that, seeing that if I could build the machine around that one service. And at the time, I didn't see the path to do that for accounting. I think there's some good options on the market right now. I know Accountants World has a great accounting platform, but at that time, I saw the path with payroll. I saw the path to scale it up and really do something big. So that's what kind of got me into the business, and I haven't looked back.
For you personally, what did you feel like you could bring to a payroll business? Were there things either in terms of your professional background and skill set, or in terms of your personal mindset that you felt sort of aligned well with payroll?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously there were concerns that I'm getting into a pretty competitive market. Obviously, you've got the big players, you've got ADP, Paychex, Intuit, that have, millions of clients basically. And so it's like, man, can I really go out there and make a dent? Can I really build a business for myself? And I think what I saw was that the market is so big. There's so many small businesses that need a payroll service that I just need a small slice of that pie to be successful. And I felt like, because of a lot of the weaknesses of the larger bureaus out there, which, they just tend to be bureaucratic and people get kind of shuffled through the assembly line. I felt like if I could come out and say, hey, look, I'm not, primarily a salesperson, kind of on the front end running the business. And then I've got, kind of cheap labor, data entry clerks, whatnot, kind of running the machine. I can do something totally different here. I can market as a professional, say, look, I'm an accountant, I'm a CPA. I understand the ins and outs of this, and I'm only going to hire people that are also professionals. So like both my staff people have their CPP license. You can take that and market that, and then once kind of word gets out that there's a new player in the market and their service is just totally blowing away the other guys, that's kind of where I felt like my competitive advantage could be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you just said reminds me of the management guru Jim Collins in one of his books talked about the young, inexperienced entrepreneur often is thinking in terms of what can I do that's new, but often the better question to ask is what can I do better? And it sounded like what you focused on right from the get-go was I can provide a level of service that the ADPs and Paychecks of the world could never hope to match.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it just took some intentionality up front in deciding that I'm gonna be very intentional about building my processes, hiring the right people, marketing in a certain way, so that I can differentiate myself. And it's not easy. It takes time to figure that stuff out and to kind of find your voice. But I took that step of faith, and I think I kind of found my way.
Mm-hmm. Yep. You mentioned, and you and I have talked about, the potential of payroll if you do it right. And I think there's still a perception among many accountants and relatively new payroll processors that this is still a pretty difficult or low margin practice to build up. Why do you think that perception still persists, and how is your reality matched up with that?
So I've talked to probably hundreds of other accountants about payroll, whether it's they're trying to outsource it or run it in-house, or they want to sell it off, or they say they never want to get into it at all because they know the horror stories. So I've heard a lot of the reasons why people don't view it as a good opportunity. The issue that I've seen with most accountants that haven't done it very well is they haven't dedicated the proper resources to it. And just because they haven't seen the opportunity. I think if they saw the opportunity that it could bring into their firms, that they would be motivated to allocate the proper resources to it. So, finding the best software, hiring the right people, and then building the system like I did. I mean, we run our business on checklists. I mean, it sounds boring, but we've got a checklist for just about everything we do. And when you do that, things don't get mixed and you don't have these nightmare scenarios that some payroll services have or some accountants have that are trying to deliver payroll where, tax payments don't get made or stuff gets filed late or, clients are confused, you're not getting good answers. These kind of things are very rare for us just because, I've kind of built the company on checklists and processes. So, that's a huge part of it is the right people, the right software, and the right systems.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. I think that makes a lot of sense. And we're going to talk more about each of those as we continue on into the next part here. So at this point, I want to just get a sense a little bit more about which of those pain points, for those of you who are currently doing a payroll practice right now, which of those pain points or challenges or perceived challenges really resonates with you. So let me go ahead and put up the second poll question here, and you should see this open in front of you right now. And so the question is, what are your major challenges in running a payroll practice right now? And if you don't run a payroll practice, obviously you can put NA at the bottom, but you can pick one or more of the following: getting new clients, refining my processes, increasing my profit margins, or other. So we just want to get a sense of what are the things that all of you folks who are attending today are most focused on, so that Tyler and I can sort of orient our discussion a little bit more towards that side as well. And just a reminder, this is our second poll question that we'll be having today, and voting in the poll questions is required in order to earn CP. And Tyler, a question came in from Samuel, and maybe it's a short answer right now, but otherwise we can just sort of file this away throughout. But it asks, can Tyler go more in depth on how he differentiates himself from the ADPs and Gustos of the world?
ADP is an easy one because there's no assigned rep, and actually Gusto is the same way too, to my knowledge. With ADP, it's an 800 number, so you're talking to somebody in a call center, and you might talk to a different person every time you call. I've heard stories of people waiting on hold, for 30, 45 minutes just to talk to somebody and get an answer. So ADP is a pretty easy target. Gusto, with them, I don't even believe they have a phone number. So there's a support email address, and that I'm not sure if it's the same person answering every time either. So you might work with a different person every time you email support. But my understanding is that they do not have a phone number to call. So those are pretty easy. Those are pretty easy differentiation points with both of those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Meredith asked, how do you compete with the pricing of a service like Gusto? But it sounds like that's not actually your primary focus. You really want to focus on the service differentiation, and if somebody still chooses to go sort of lowest base price, that's probably not going to be your client. Am I right in assuming that?
I 100% agree. If someone is looking for the cheapest service, I hate to say it, but I don't really want to work with them. Because the people that pay the lowest price tend to value the service the least as well. I want people that recognize that we're a premium service and that they're going to get what they pay for. I don't really want to fill up our client base with a lot of, low-paying clients. So it actually works out well that there's other services out there that can handle people that are super price sensitive, because they're probably not going to be a good fit for my model.
Yep. And it's also, there's a real issue with scalability there, right? You're never going to really grow your earnings potential with those clients. They're always going to be the ones that sort of squeeze you the most and have the most questions and the most complaints as well. So yeah, I think there's a reason that ADP and Paychex exist. But if you're trying to build this sort of practice that Tyler has built, there shouldn't be that much overlap in terms of sort of the ideal client for each of those, because you're serving a very different need in that case. Let's go ahead and close out the poll here. I'll give just 5 final seconds for anybody who hasn't polled. Make sure to click the submit button here as well. And all right, here we go. So Tyler, it looks like the number one challenge that people are facing is getting new clients, and we'll be talking about marketing in just a minute here. And then also pretty equally refining my processes and increasing my profit margins as well. So we can sort of keep that in our minds as we go through the next few slides here. All right. So let's talk a little bit, before we get into the how, let's talk about the current state of your practice. We talked about sort of where you started from. Walk us through, am I remembering right, your practice has been around for about 7 years now, is that correct?
Yep, coming up on 7 years.
Yep. So walk me through sort of the evolution and from a numerical perspective of where you were at the beginning to where you are now.
Yeah, it's been an interesting ride. There's a common statistic you hear that most businesses fail within 5 years. New businesses fail within 5 years. What I've seen is, those first 5 years, there was a lot of work that went in, a lot of hustle that went into building the business and trying to get new clients and all that kind of stuff. Now that we're into our 6th and almost 7th year, I've seen that momentum really build. Now we're getting just a lot of organic growth at this point. In the early years, I was, I think I had maybe 25 clients maybe after my first year and a half, and then I went to 50 and then went to 100, and it was almost 100% growth there for a couple of years as I was smaller. As we've gotten bigger, that year-over-year growth, I think last year was like 35%, and then this past year we grew 40% basically from this time of the year until March. So that kind of year end, really, big sales period, we grew the business 40%. That was pretty awesome. And I see trends that are telling me that we're probably going to see something similar happen at the end of this year. So that's kind of been our growth pattern.
Great. And are you focused on specific industries, or do you serve across industries? That's a question that Denise and somebody else have asked so far.
For the most part, payroll is payroll. It doesn't really matter what industry you're in. There's some interesting things with, churches with minister salaries. When you get into construction type industries, there's, special reports if they, if they have to report their contractor payrolls to the government, and then restaurants, there's tips and stuff like that. But so there's some nuances from industry to industry, but for the most part, you're filing the same reports with the IRS and the state. So it hasn't really made sense to try to niche or like focus on a particular industry, at least for us. I feel like, and we have a wide variety of clients in lots of different industries, lots of different sizes of clients. So I'm super big on streamlining processes and bringing the right kind of client. We've never had an issue necessarily bringing in a certain type of client from an industry. So I think with payroll, the requirements are similar for the most part across the board, where you can pretty much take on anybody from any industry.
Great. You mentioned briefly about your margins. And a couple of people have asked about your pricing. So can you talk a little bit about sort of what and we'll talk in a little bit about Payroll Relief and how their pricing fits into what you do. But can you talk a little bit about sort of what you're charging your clients and then what you're paying as well, and how that translates on a margin basis?
Yeah, and would it be helpful if I maybe gave an example of a specific situation?
Yeah. I think that's great.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you, and we'll talk more about the pricing structure of Payroll Relief later, but as you scale up, your price per check, that you're running through the system goes down. And so the more volume you get, the more profitable you become. At this point, we're at the point where for each check we run through the system, we're paying 60 cents. And so just as an example, we do a lot of single owner S corp payrolls. So it's just the owner of an S corp cut themselves a monthly paycheck and get a W-2 at year end. Pretty simple to do. I price that depending on the situation between 50 on the low end and up to $75 a month on the high end. So my marginal, profit for that is 75 on the high end, $75 minus 60 cents. That's like a 99% profit margin on running that payroll. Now, obviously, I have some other overhead and labor costs. I mean, but it's so quick to run a payroll like that to bring on a new client like that, it literally is like 98, 99% profit margin. So that's kind of the extreme example, because there's not a lot of complexity to that. But even clients that are running a biweekly payroll with 5 employees, my cost on that's just going to be like $6 a month, something like that. And then I might charge $100 to $150 a month to run a payroll like that. So you have to factor in all the variety of other costs, but from a marginal standpoint, the profit margin is pretty crazy. Especially as you build and you cover your fixed costs, then it's just almost pure profit as you're bringing new clients on board. Dave, you still there? I'm not hearing you.
Sorry about that. I muted for just a moment there. So let's go ahead and talk about marketing then, Tyler, and then we'll talk about staffing from there. So what was your marketing approach when you first started up your business, and how is it different than now?
It's definitely evolved over time. I mean, at first it was a lot of local networking for me. I built a website and I was trying to get some reviews online and stuff like that. But really, it was joining the Chamber of Commerce. I was in a leads group or a couple leads groups, trying to get coffee meetings with business owners, with other professionals that might refer clients. So it was really just me kind of out there hustling and trying to get clients, wherever I could. So that's how it started. It's definitely changed. I think it was a couple of years ago or a year and a half ago when I decided, I'm doing more digital marketing, but I want to kind of duplicate this in-person networking that I'm doing. And so I hired a salesperson, and she did a good job. She did kind of what I was hoping she would do, but I just wasn't seeing a lot of results from it compared to the results that I was seeing from digital marketing. And I think I kind of had an epiphany that, I can hire a salesperson to go and kind of clone myself maybe and go out into the local market and try to get business. But if I'm using digital marketing, I can clone myself 10,000 times, because I can use, the power of social media and, LinkedIn and Facebook and stuff like that to take my message from my personality and also from my company and connect with hundreds or even thousands of people. So when I had that insight, I just kind of decided to go all in on the digital front. And so far that's been a good decision.
Mm-hmm. Great. So if you were to say right now, what would you say maybe in some sort of order, what would you say your most important marketing channels are?
I use LinkedIn a lot, because I think I've found that people really like to do business with people that they know, like, and trust, right? And so if I can kind of put myself out there and connect with people, be helpful to people, give advice, that I'm basically creating kind of a culture of trust around myself. And then once people find out what I do and what company I'm with, that's naturally going to translate into being able to do business with some of these people. So LinkedIn has been a huge channel for me. I just kind of, obviously I've got a Facebook page for my company, and we're posting on there on a regular basis. And I've got kind of a personal business page on Facebook as well, just Tyler Winn Payroll CPA that I've just gotten started, and we'll kind of see where that goes. The other channel is YouTube. We're very new into this. I'm always kind of experimenting with new channels, but what we're doing is just making kind of little payroll, like payroll minute videos, if you want to call it that, where we pick a specific topic, talk about it for 2 or 3 minutes, something that would be helpful to a business owner. We put that out on YouTube under our company page, and then I post that under our LinkedIn and Facebook company pages as well. So, as that grows, I'll probably promote that more, try to gain some followers that way. But, I'm always kind of playing the long game. So I know that with marketing, you've kind of got to just be consistent on these social media channels, and you've got to post stuff that's actually helpful and useful to people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm doing at this point.
Yeah, and putting on my marketing hat for a minute, I mean, I think YouTube is a potentially really interesting channel. You don't have to have great production values. You're not trying to build an Academy Award winning film here. You just need to be able to present your point of view and to have an authentic, well-informed point of view, and to be able to present. I think it can be really powerful for there. So that's great to hear. How much of an effect does word of mouth have for your business at this stage of your growth?
I mean, word of mouth is always great. If anything, if people hear about me and then go look at our stuff online, it just kind of all validates itself. So for us, I would say word of mouth is good. It's probably been more useful to me, not necessarily clients, talking to other prospective clients, although I've gotten a lot of referrals from our current client base to other clients. But a lot of the word of mouth is kind of within the other professional communities that I'm trying to target. So, I've grown the business a lot by getting referrals from other CPAs and accountants and bookkeepers. And my reputation there and our company reputation continues to grow. So, if 2 accountants are talking to each other and one of them is complaining about the payroll service of one of their clients, the other one knows us and likes us, they're going to mention us, or even in Facebook groups for accountants, I've been tagged as, hey, someone's complaining about payroll, another accountant will chime in and say, hey, you should talk to Tyler Winn, they'll tag me. And then that could start up a conversation. So it's kind of funny how word of mouth has evolved in this day and age. Some of it's just talking over coffee and my company will get mentioned, but sometimes it's getting tagged in a closed Facebook group that I'm not even a part of.
Yeah.
So word of mouth, I think, has taken on a bigger role as technology's evolved too.
And I think you just talked to really well to how social media and word of mouth intersect with each other, because part of the point of having social media these days for a payroll service or an accounting firm is to be able to put your message out there, sort of that one directional getting your message out to people. But the other part of it is to serve as a conduit when other people are having conversations. So someone is complaining about their payroll service, someone else says, I've got the answer for it, and you're already on Facebook or on LinkedIn, they tag you, and now you become a part of that conversation sort of instantly and can immediately bring that person in with basically zero incremental cost there. So it's powerful from an economic perspective, and it's really powerful in terms of getting the types of customers that you want as well.
It's funny because we got a new client, I think it was a couple of months ago, and she was down in Florida. We're in Oklahoma. I had no idea who she was, but she reached out and said, "Hey, I heard some good things about you, and I want to talk about getting payroll set up for my firm." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Where did you hear about us? I'm always curious when out-of-state people reach out." And she couldn't even remember. She said, "It's in some Facebook group I'm in. Somebody tagged you, and I don't even know who it was." So it's funny, the connections that can happen, but you have to have a presence out there for people to be able to refer you.
Yep, that's absolutely right. And that's actually, I think, a perfect segue here to talk about reviews. Shall we go ahead and talk about that a little bit, Tyler?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So let's start with in terms of the power of great reviews, if you can talk a little bit about how you ask for reviews and when you ask for them and where to post them, and then I'll show sort of what the results have been for you as well.
Yeah, so I'll actually start with Winn to ask for reviews, because I had a conversation with, in my first year in business, I reached out to somebody who'd been in the industry for a while, was having a lot of good success. And I just reached out and said, hey, I'd love, can I pick your brain for 30 minutes? And he was kind enough to let me do that. The one thing he shared for me that I distinctly remember is he said, you really need to get reviews. And he told me the ideal time to do it. He said, you should always ask for a review about a month after you run the first payroll. And the reason for that is you've had some time for them to get on board with you, to get all the paperwork ironed out, and then you've actually run 1 or 2 payrolls that hopefully have gone smoothly. At that point, especially if they've come out of a bad experience into a good experience with you, that's the peak of their happiness level with you, is about a month in, because they've seen the difference you're providing. After that, they're still going to be happy with you, but you're just you're not the new interesting thing anymore. You're just running payroll at that point. And so a month in is the ideal time to ask for that review, because that's when people are going to be most likely to give one. How I ask for it, like I said, we run pretty much the whole business off checklist. So one of the onboarding checklist items is to set a reminder 1 month after we run the first payroll to ask for a review. And so that reminder pops up about a month after in our task management system. I generate an email out to the client. I briefly ask them for reviews. They would mean a lot to me. I make it very easy. I kind of make it a 1, 2, 3 step thing. So I say, click on this link, which takes them directly to the review page. I say, click 5 stars and write us a short review. We'd really appreciate it. And so that I probably get maybe a 10 to 20% response rate on that, but people actually do it. But I think that the key and the kicker here is that I have a second step to this where I follow up another 3 to 4 business days later. If they haven't written the review, I just do a quick follow-up and say, hey, I just want to make sure you saw this. It'd mean a lot to me if you wrote us a review. I promise I won't bug you about this again. That's where I get the response. That's where I get probably 40 to 50% of people writing a review, if not more. I haven't actually run the numbers, but it's at least that. And so it's that consistency of saying a month in, I'm going to ask for it, then I'm going to follow up and ask for it again. Because people are busy. That first email is going to get lost. You've got to kind of get yourself back up to the top of the inbox again. And then that's when people are going to go write it. So that's kind of the when, and also the how. It's just an email ask with a follow-up. And then I ask them to post in I've asked for reviews on Facebook. I've built up some there. Yelp is one that I actually want to kind of focus more on, because most payroll services don't have Yelp reviews, and Google is starting to recognize Yelp more and more. So when you look for a payroll service in your local area, the top 10 payroll services in Yelp is tending to come up in the search results. So I want to focus on that. But obviously the big one that I focused on is Google, and we can talk about that.
Yep, that's great. Now I'm going to pull up both the testimonials on your site as well as on Google in just a minute here. While I'm doing that, 2 questions that have come in. A couple of folks asked, do you use a task management system, or are you just managing your checklist manually?
When I first started, it was all in Word documents. Fortunately, we've evolved beyond that. We use Asana, ASANA. It's a really awesome, we use it really as project management. So we build out our templates for our onboarding, for terminations, for quarterly filings, for year-end filings, all that kind of stuff. It kind of has its own checklist. And there's a team collaboration aspect of it as well, where we can all be in there together, and we can have side conversations about tasks. We can assign due dates, assign it to a different team member, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty collaborative software that we use, where you can, where we build up these templates and then just copy them for each new client that needs that project.
Mm-hmm. Great. So folks, Tyler, are you seeing the testimonials screen in my browser in front of you?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, great. So this is the testimonials page on Cirrus Payroll's website. It's just cirruspayroll.com/testimonials. And so you'll see here he's got a few testimonials and then a few more and more and more. And it's really amazing. Very few companies will have this many really exceptional reviews on their site. And two things I'll say about this. Two benefits of this. Number one is a new potential client coming to this page is more likely to find somebody who they can identify with, either in terms of the industry or the experience or what they are looking for, their pain point, whatever it might be. So having more testimonials helps from that perspective. The other thing is Google in their search algorithm loves pages like this because this is a number of people commenting, obviously positively in this case, about the service that belongs to that website. And so Google considers that more trustworthy than just a company talking about themselves, which makes sense. And that gives you a bump up in your score for organic search results. This is also a good time. You mentioned Google before and asking for reviews on there. So I went ahead and did a search. The search term here was payroll in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And so you'll see the ads up here at the top. ADP and Paychex and QuickBooks are paying for advertising there. But a lot of us are pretty good at this point at tuning out the advertising at the top of Google Ads. And so what matters the most is what happens from this point onward. And the first thing people will notice when they're coming to here is the map and the top three that are reviewed here. And so the top three are Cirrus Payroll, Southwestern Payroll Service, and then Payroll Made Simple. Payroll Made Simple has no reviews in here, so that's a little bit of a red flag for prospective clients. Cirrus Payroll, Tyler's firm, has 100 reviews with an average score of 5.0. And I've told Tyler this before, that in all the marketing I've done, I could count on one hand the number of companies I know that actually have truly 5.0 average ratings. It's exceptionally rare for that to happen. And it's obviously a credit to Tyler and his team that they've got that. But just as important is the 100 reviews. Google highly, highly values that. Southwestern Payroll Service has 9 reviews and they're averaging a 4.1. And in fact, if you went to more places, you would see Paychex on there, and their average in Oklahoma is I believe, 2.5. And ADP is not much better than that. So Tyler is really, really standing out here. And you can see here, sort of in black and white, the sort of potential impact that the work that Tyler is doing in terms of institutionalizing reviews and making it a very standardized process, that work is really paying off for prospective clients. We know that Google search is still the #1 place that prospective clients are likely to go. And so being able to start with this is really, really powerful. So a couple of people have asked, can you edit or not include bad reviews? Have you ever received bad reviews? I'll mention sort of in general on Google and Yelp and other services. Usually you cannot remove them. If you're the proprietor of a business, you can't remove them unless you can prove that they're fake. But what you can do is usually respond to them as the business. But obviously it's even better if everyone who you ask 1 month in is willing to write a great review for you. So that's obviously the best case scenario there.
Hey,
Anything
Div,
else
can I
on this?
mention one other thing?
Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing I've done to make sure I'm getting positive reviews is there's kind of a step that actually I skipped mentioning. So after we run their first payroll, on the next business date after that pay date, I also send a personal email to our contact or the owner of the business and ask them how things went. I say, I welcome any feedback about our sales process, our onboarding, our service, the team member that's assigned to you. I want to hear from you if there's any issues. So I can head those off right away because if there's something wrong, that's when I'm going to hear about it. So I can head that off, fix it, and a month in, I'm still going to have a happy client that wants to go out there and write the review. So that's a big step as well to making sure I'm getting positive reviews out there.
That's great. So in the interest of time, should we go ahead and move on to staffing and then talk a little bit about solutions?
Uh-huh.
All right, sounds great. So let's talk a little bit about your business model, specifically as it comes to staff. What's your strategy in terms of hiring and development and retention?
So I mean, I'm trying to hire the best people, and all this stuff is kind of a virtuous circle. So as I have the right software that can streamline my operations, become more profitable, have good prices. I'm never advertising on price. I'm more of a premium service. So, there's more profitability there. Because I'm hiring good staff, I'm retaining more clients. It's just, as you kind of go up the chain, just everything sort of complements itself. And so, Payroll Relief has been a great software for us to use in that regard. Probably one big thing that comes to mind as far as, recruitment is that we are a paperless digital payroll service. Payroll Relief can be geared a few different ways. If you want to print checks in-house and mail them out, that's totally fine. That's easy to do. I just kind of decided up front that I wanted to be paperless and digital. So what that's allowed me to do is actually let my employees work from home. So we all work in the Tulsa area, but we only see each other about once a month. Obviously, we're constantly talking to each other every day, but we only meet face-to-face once a month, and we usually do like a book club or something like that. And so obviously that in this day and age is viewed as a huge benefit of employment. And so that's allowed me to retain, recruit and retain my staff.
Yep, that's great. And because you're doing a fully digital, streamlined service, and you're not having to pay as much for all the things that would typically come with having a full staff in office every single day and so on, you've got some additional benefits that you're able to provide to your employees as well, right?
Yeah, and I should have pointed that out. So since we don't have a physical location, I don't have the overhead that's associated with that. So what I'm doing with all this, with these higher margins and things that I'm able to accomplish is I'm really just plowing it back into the business. I'm plowing back into my employees, continuing to invest in our technology. But with my staff, I've been able to do some really interesting things. So, I mean, we're a company of 3 people. It's me and 2 employees. We have a simple IRA that I match. We have a health reimbursement arrangement where I'm helping pay for their insurance. We've got flexible spending. We've got dependent care. We've got dental, vision. And so I've been able to do a lot of kind of those standard sort of things, that good PTO plans. But a really interesting one I rolled out this summer, which I was super excited about. I actually am now paying for my employees to get their house cleaned every 2 weeks. And that was a really, really fun one to roll out. And kind of my rationale behind it was, hey, if we all worked in an office, we'd have cleaners coming in and cleaning up our office, making sure everything's tidy. So my employees are going to be working from home. Why can't I provide the same service to them? So, if you're working in a good, clean environment, that's just going to be good for everybody. And it's just going to make everybody happier. And it was a cool thing to be able to bless them with. So I'm always looking for kind of the next interesting little benefit to provide.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I think that's a really creative, interesting approach, and that may not be the right answer for everyone, but I think the idea of sort of thinking outside the box in terms of what you can provide there. You and I have talked a little bit about how you perceive staff and the economics of your business as being related in terms of reinvestment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is all a virtuous circle. So, as we grow, as we retain staff, as we continue to increase our profit margins, I'm just putting this back into the company, and I'm training and sort of it's allowing me to hire really good people that I can trust and that are professionals, and then I can really kind of train them and almost hand the company off to them to run the day-to-day operation. So, if I was a low price service with low margins and I was paying people as cheaply as I could to run payroll, I wouldn't be able to step away from the business, because there would always be things that I would need to be involved in, or things going wrong, or fires to put out. because I'm hiring really good people that I trust, it allows me to sort of step back and work on the business instead of in the business. And that's why I probably spend 70 to 80, probably 80% of my time working on sales and marketing related stuff. And obviously there's just things that come with being a business owner that I have to deal with, legal, financial, all that kind of stuff. But as far as the day-to-day operations, I've pretty much stepped away. I'm always available to my staff if they have questions or need help, but I'm involved less and less. And that's allowed me to really focus on, how can I take care of my employees? How can I continue to build our processes out? How can I look at maybe bolting on some other services for our clients? But really, it just allows me to take a more strategic role in the company and focus a lot on marketing.
Great. Do you have any, while we're talking about staff, one last question on this, and then we can move on to payroll relief. A couple of folks have asked, what do you do in terms of data security and protection? For example, do you require that they not log in to do work from certain locations or from cafes or things like that?
Yeah. So, first of all, the software itself is extremely secure. So I've never had any concerns about that. As far as where they work from, they typically work from home. So that's going to be a secure internet connection. I work from coffee shops almost every day. I'll kind of split my time between working from my home office and then going out and working in a coffee shop. And we just use a VPN. So every laptop that we use has a VPN installed, and if we're ever on a public Wi-Fi at the airport or coffee shop or whatever, that has to be turned on, and that's going to protect the information as we're on that wireless internet.
Yep, and I think the one thing I'll add there, the combination of a secure network on your side, secure network connection, plus payroll relief is a great way to go. Payroll relief, as you mentioned briefly, follows all the leading security protocols and is fully up to date on that. So you can go to our website at accountantsworld.com to learn more about our data security and privacy policy, and sort of how we handle that part of it. And I think you spoke well to what you're doing on your side there as well. Should we move ahead here, Tyler, or anything else on this?
I think we're good. Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about payroll relief, the solution that you use for processing and compliance. Can you talk a little bit about how you decided on payroll relief in the first place and the role that their pricing played there in terms of managing risk for you?
Yeah, the pricing is huge. There's probably a couple different things. One is, I kind of made that strategic decision up front that I wanted to be able to build a digital company, a paperless company. And so as I was looking around, I saw, this is back in late 2011. There were web-based payroll services back then besides Payroll Relief, but Payroll Relief was sort of built for the web from its infancy, whereas I was looking at other software that was kind of legacy software that they were trying to take into the cloud, and it was kind of clunky and bulky, and I wanted something really streamlined. And so that was one of the big reasons I landed on Payroll Relief. From a pricing standpoint, I was a startup. I had no money, and I was just trying to grow something from scratch. I never took on a business loan or anything like that. I just kind of hustled and had to make it happen. But because of the entry price, and I think you'll talk about that later, I was able to make a small investment into the software, which gave me the ability over that first year to basically run as many payrolls as I needed to for that entry level price. Whereas I've looked at some other software that just to get the licensing done and get onboarded and get trained and all that, I've seen $9,000. I've seen $17,000. Pretty substantial investments just to get in the game. Whereas with Payroll Relief as a startup, that was bootstrapping it with no outside money. I was able to get in and grow it from there. So that was awesome for me.
That's great. And in terms of sort of what payroll relief means for you in terms of your operations, I think probably the best way to explain that is to look through some of the screens that you're using the most. So let's talk a little bit about sort of the screens that you love on, the screens where you're making your money in payroll relief, and I think that'll probably help people to understand what you're talking about here. So do you want to explain a little bit about the snapshot screen here?
Yeah, so this is basically what we use as our home screen. It lists all of our clients that we've got in kind of a grid format there with some pertinent information. It's always, when you first go to the screen, it's just default sorted by that process date. And so I can come on this screen and it's sorted in chronological order by when that payroll has to be processed to be done on time. And so I can automatically go in and see, okay, what are the payrolls that have to be processed today? My staff can go in and do that as well. And then you can look forward into the future, how heavy is our load going to be next week? You can look at those process dates too. So that's the biggest thing we use this for. Also, the next tax due date is a big one that we just review every day. Payroll Relief is handling, a lot of the tax compliance in the back end without us needing to be involved in the payments and stuff like that. But that requires us to set it up correctly with the account numbers and enable e-services and do a couple tasks to set it up and get it going. So that is really helpful. Let's say we accidentally missed a step and we forgot to turn e-services on for a particular state, for a particular client. We're going to see that next tax due date kind of approaching and getting closer and closer, and then it'll get highlighted in yellow if it's upcoming, and red if it's overdue. So it will trigger us to say, oh, we need to go into this client setup and make sure that we've done all of our steps to make sure that they're good to go for e-services. So that's just a nice thing to be able to keep an eye on. The other thing, which is really helpful, is that little drop-down menu that's dropped down, the display by in the top left. That staff contact is pretty awesome. The way we run our business model is every client has an assigned staff person in my company, and we assign them within the system. So like one of my employees can go in and they can see all the payrolls for the entire company. And like, that's really good for my manager to see because she needs an overview of everything. And then she can also drill down and say, okay, what are the clients that are just assigned to me that I personally have to process today? So you can kind of toggle between those and see the overview or see a particular person. Then if somebody is like on vacation, say my other employee's on vacation, my manager can go in and see, okay, what are her payrolls that need to get done, and I can jump in and help. So we have kind of a combination of, yes, everyone has an assigned staff person, and we can filter by that, but also there's still that team approach where anybody can go in and help somebody with something else. So those are kind of the main ways that we're using that screen, although you can see there's a lot of other useful information there.
Great. And because sorry, my screen just closed here. Let me go ahead and open this back up. I know we're running just a little behind on time, folks, so we'll try to get through the next bit here as quickly as possible, but let me go ahead and open up the permission screen. So Tyler, if you want to just give a quick overview on what you do here on the permission screen.
Yeah, you can go client by client and assign what parts of the system you want them to have access to, which allows you to run a variety of business models. For us, there's certain things we let our clients do, and there's certain things we don't let our clients do. Other services have a different approach, which is just as valid. So you can kind of custom tailor that however you want to do it. And then you can also, there's a master client login you can assign, and we use that for third parties, like, the client's tax repair or something, where we can go in and grant them access, and we can also tailor their permissions. So there's a lot of good stuff you can do there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We really pride ourselves at Payroll Relief on you can customize the payroll service to the needs of each of your clients individually. And this is really the screen that allows you to make that happen. And that means you're providing better service and you get better client retention there as well. Okay, let's go to the payroll data entry screen.
So I'm pretty self-explanatory. This is where we actually have our clients go in and enter their hours. And so they can go in here, see all the employees, see the pay and deduction types across the top. You can default in hours. So like a lot of the employees on the screen have 40 hours. So this is probably a weekly payroll, and it's just defaulting the 40 in. If that's what they're always getting paid, you can obviously modify that. But those defaults help save some time on entry. So once everything's in here and looks good, the client can hit calculate, that blue calculate button in the top right. And if you want to go to the next screen there.
Sure.
It actually takes you to a payroll review page, and I think we'll get to that later, but this is kind of this modify tab here is kind of cool because you can, after you've calculated, you can go into each individual paycheck and override if you need to do an override. Let's say you needed to override the income tax withholding, or you needed to override their 401k deduction or something like that. You can go in here and make that, you can make that change very quickly and easily. I've seen other payroll software that modifying a check like that is like a crazy amount of work. And for this, it's just simply going to the screen, making the modification, resaving it, and you're good to go. So that's kind of what that one's for. And then this is really, actually, can we go forward one more slide? I want to get to that payroll review. Yeah, so this is after the client has calculated, this is the screen that they go to that they're going to see, which shows kind of an overview of the payroll. So what are the taxes, what are the deductions, what's the total cost of payroll there on the bottom right. And then if there's any errors, you can see that warning box. That's an indication that they need to go back and fix something. They can also, there's that report button, that blue button in the top right. So after they've calculated payroll, they can actually look at a pre-approval register, which is going to show exactly how the payroll is going to run. So maybe if you could go to that screen next.
Sure.
I think that might be the next slide forward. So it's just a complete payroll register, but it's got that pre-approval on there. So they can kind of spot check and do what they need to do to make sure the payroll looks good. And if you want to go, if you want to go back one slide, back to the payroll review screen.
Okay, should I go forward here?
Oh, just go back to the review screen, the previous one. Sorry for making you jump around.
No problem.
So once they've looked at that report, this is actually from that approve button is up there. We actually don't give our clients access to that button. We give them access to a submit button. And what they do when they've entered payroll, calculated it, reviewed the report, made sure there's no errors, there's a submit button that they will click, and that will send a notification to our office via email that payroll is ready to approve. And then we actually go in and click that approve button to finalize the payroll, initiate the bank transactions, and all that. So that's kind of, again, these things can kind of be tailored depending on your process. Some people out there let their clients approve the payroll. That's totally fine. For us, we just decided we didn't want, that level of access to be given to them for different reasons. And so that's kind of the process. It's enter payroll, calculate it, review it, submit it to our office, and then we approve. If you want to go to the next, I might have you skip a couple of the next slides. Yeah, skip that. So this is the check printing screen. This is kind of the final screen you end up on during this process. For us, we aren't actually, like I mentioned, we aren't printing checks. If clients need physical checks, they have access to this screen, and so they can actually use like pre-printed check stock or even blank check stock. We set that up for them on the front end, and they can print the checks in-house. Also, what we're doing from the screen is we're emailing reports. There's a button up there. So after we process the payroll, we're emailing the reports. Those go out via email to the assigned payroll contact for that client, and they can see their final payroll register. They can see a summary report, which shows exactly what's going to come out of their bank account for taxes, direct deposit, or fee. We can also email the checks from the screen. So if they want pay stubs, it's just 2 clicks. 1 click to email the reports, 1 click to email the checks. and the client has all the information that they need for that payroll, and they're good to go. So that's kind of an overview of how the process works, pretty streamlined.
Great. And let me see here. ACH transactions, anything you want to mention on here?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief, but this is an awesome screen, very underrated. One of the most powerful things about Payroll Relief is that I do not have to handle the tax impounding. Accountants World is doing all the movement of the money. So direct deposits, taxes, our fee, child support EFTs, these types of things, they are not coming through a bank account that Cirrus Payroll owns and manages and has to reconcile, which I will tell you is a beast of a task to reconcile impound taxes, because you've got various tax types, you've got different clients. All this money is flowing through a bank account. This is how some payroll services manage it. And some of you probably on this webinar are dealing with this. I don't have to touch that at all. Accountants World is moving the money around. They're keeping everything reconciled and clear. And on the screen, I can see exactly where the money is coming from and where it's going. So I can see every ACH transaction that's been initiated to the client's account. I can see who that direct deposit was for. I can see employee names. I can see if it was child support, when it was debited, when it was sent to the state. It's complete transparency. It balances out, and it makes me comfortable that things are being done correctly and reconciled on Accountants World's end, but I don't have to touch it. And I can tell you that saves hours and hours and hours of time. I might have to hire like somebody for 20 hours a week just to keep all of our impound taxes reconciled if I was doing it. So this, this is a very powerful screen.
That's great. And then last thing, W-2 batch processing.
This is, I think, a fairly new screen that they rolled out maybe a couple years ago. At year end, obviously, processing W-2s is a big job. But from this screen, you can see all your clients. You can select multiple clients. You can select all of them. And you can batch print. You can email the W-2s to the client, and you can password protect those. That release button in the top right is to release the W-2s to the employee portals. So when the employees log into their individual portals, they can see their W-2, but they can't see it until you select the client from this list and release it. You can also e-file it with Social Security Administration in bulk, and then archive them out to Cloud Cabinet. So, I mean, you don't have to go through each individual client to get this done. You can select as many as you want and just do them in bulk, and that saves a ton of time.
Okay, great. And I know we've rushed through this, folks, and we're trying to be as quick as possible because I know we're over time here. But certainly, if you can stick around afterwards to ask any other questions to Tyler, that would be great. So I just want to briefly talk about Payroll Relief for 1 minute, and then I'll put up the third poll question. Thanks for your patience. I think Tyler has covered a lot of this, but Payroll Relief is focused on making payroll as fast and efficient and hassle-free as possible for you. You saw the intuitive, streamlined workflow. It follows the natural workflow of payroll. You can customize your Payroll Relief to best meet the needs of each client. We've offered unprecedented automation for everything from tax payments and direct deposit to tax filings, child support, batch processing, and much more, and comprehensive functionality to handle any type of business, unlimited pay types, and we offer an exhaustive set of reports for compliance and management as well. That's why 70% of our customers have been able to reduce their payroll processing time by 25% or more with us. A couple of you have asked about the pricing of Payroll Relief. So the first year special for the first 12 months, you can process up to 3,000 paychecks in the first year for just $1,495. That's a fully inclusive fee. Additional paychecks within the first year are 50 cents each. After the first year, you can buy per paycheck, and the more paychecks you purchase, the lower the price becomes. Tyler right now is at 60 cents per check. Eventually, he will probably grow his way into 55 or 50 cents per check as well. And for low volume users, you can also pay on a per payroll basis. So at this point, I'd like to go ahead and launch the third poll question. And so you should see this in front of you. So please select the option related to Payroll Relief that applies to you. I'd like to take the next step to use Payroll Relief in my firm. I have questions that I want answered. I want to see a detailed demo of Payroll Relief. Payroll Relief does not meet our firm's needs, or I'm sticking with my current solution provider. So we should be seeing that going on at this point. This is the final poll question. So thank you for your patience in us getting this up. Tyler, one other question while people are filling this out here. People asked, do you charge for W-2s? Do you charge for quarterly filings, end of year filings, etc.?
So all that's possible to bill through the system. Our pricing model is we just bill per payroll. So we do a base fee per payroll and then a small charge per check that's on that payroll. And then we do charge for W-2s at year end. On that, so when I first started out, I think I was offering free W-2s, and I was using that as kind of a selling point. What I did about 3 years in is decided to go ahead and charge for that. And I emailed all my clients and told them I was going to start charging for this service. And I think at the time, maybe I had 125 clients. I think one of them pushed back on it. And it was somebody that likes to push back on a lot of things. So there was no resistance to paying for that service. I think clients see the value in it. So I definitely recommend charging for W-2s. It's a great extra little income boost at year end, and you are doing a lot of work for the client. And so I think there's an expectation that there's a price attached. We don't charge for quarterlies. I've just tried to cover all those compliance fees within our per payroll pricing structure. But yeah, we try to keep it very, very simple. I see that there's a lot of resistance to what's perceived as maybe nickel and diming. And so the simpler I can keep our pricing structure, the more attractive it's going to be.
Just taking a quick look here to see if there are any others that come in, and then I'm going to go ahead and close up the poll here in just a second. Let's see. I think we've covered a lot of these. Interesting question from Jessica. Approximately how many hours a week do you and your staff work?
How many hours per week do we work? Well, as a business owner, sometimes I feel like my mind is always on business, and I have to fight that. My staff does not typically work past 5 o'clock. They work till probably 6 on heavier days. Monday and Tuesdays tend to be kind of front loaded with a lot of payrolls to process. So, they may be working till 6, but we're not working late. I would say we have a very balanced workload. So I know like one of my employees goes and works out in the middle of the day because she can step away and come back because she's working from home, and that's totally fine. All I care is that the work's getting done. I honestly cannot tell you how much my employees work because I have told them all I care is that the work gets done. I'm paying you for the value you're providing, not for the hours that you're working, and I can't really track their hours worked anyway because they're from home. So I would say they have a good balanced workload because I don't see them working late. I know there were a lot of people because last year the title of the webinar was I processed 175 payrolls with one staff person. There's some interesting comments on LinkedIn about how I was kind of a bad boss for working my people to the bone. It's simply not the case. We can do that. And yeah, there's busier days, but I have very generous PTO. There's a lot of flexibility to leave work and come back from work. Like both of my employees actually have young children, and they're able to leave and go pick them up from daycare. And there's a lot of different kind of benefits to the model that we've created. Yeah, I couldn't tell you the exact number of hours, but I think it's a balanced load.
Great. Um, eh, for folks who've got a couple of final questions, Tyler, are you okay with sticking around for a couple more minutes here?
Sure.
Okay, great. For those of you who need to get going, I apologize again for us having gone a little bit over, but hopefully you got a lot out of this. Thank you so much for joining us today. Tyler's contact information is up there. You can find him on LinkedIn. Search for Tyler Winn. And his company is at cirruspayroll.com, CIRRUS payroll.com. And you can see sort of what he's doing directly on the site there as well. If you'd like to learn more about Payroll Relief, if you've already expressed that you'd like to learn more about it, we'll certainly be contacting you. But if you'd like to go ahead and learn more in the meantime, you can go to accountantsworld.com/faster payroll, just all one word, faster payroll, and you'll go directly to Payroll Relief there. So thanks again for joining us there. And for any of you who do have questions, feel free to bring them in. Let's see, what sort of lead time does Tyler recommend from his clients from pay end date to check date?
I like to see a full week, and I think for biweekly and weekly pay schedules, that's pretty standard. What that does, let's say the pay date's on Friday. It's good if that's for hours worked through the previous Friday or through the previous weekend. So the client can compile all those hours on a Monday and then submit those hours to us by Tuesday, and then we can process the payroll and get direct deposits to employees' accounts by Friday. That's kind of a typical process and lead time that we would have for a client.
Question from Carla, what's the highest number of employees from a single employer that you handle, and do you have a cap on the number you would accept?
Yeah, so there's no cap. Obviously, I talk to every client, make sure they're a good fit for how we do things. Our biggest client right now has about 250 employees, and our smallest is one employee. So kind of runs the gamut there. But for us, the average client size, I would say, is around 10 employees. That small business client is really the sweet spot for us. Anything under 50 is a sweet spot, but really, but from 1 to 25 is even sweeter. But we're able to obviously go up and serve bigger clients than that.
Mm-hmm. How much of a learning curve is it to bring on payroll services either for new clients or for new states that you haven't handled previously?
I'll go back to my checklist mantra. For every new state that we go into, we create an internal checklist of how you register the unemployment tax account, the withholding tax account, how you register with the state to make sure that, tax deposits can be remitted electronically. If we need online access to do anything with the client account, all that stuff is, when they come on board, we know what state they're going to be in, and we just work our process to get them all set up. And then if they expand into a new state, we register just as a courtesy for our clients. If they need new payroll tax accounts, or if they're expanding into a new state, we just do the registrations for them. I find it's easier to do that than to give it to the client to do, because we know we're going to get it done and we know the process, and they don't have to, to learn that. They've got other things to do. So it's not been because we've kind of built out our own internal guide for every state that we've gone into, it's not that hard.
Okay, great. Let's see. Just taking a quick look to see if there are any other questions that we haven't answered here. Do you find yourself competing with QuickBooks Online or QuickBooks Desktop?
A little bit. We have had clients that have come to us. What typically happens in a scenario like that is, how QuickBooks sells itself, right? They're the DIY solution that's not really as DIY as they claim. And so a lot of business owners will kind of get suckered in and say, okay, Intuit said this is like super easy. I can run my own payroll. It's a little bit cheaper. I'm just going to do it myself. And that's typically where they'll start. And then they'll realize that there's actually more more to do to keep up with it on their own. And they usually come to us when something's already been screwed up and they have no idea how to fix it. Or they come to us and say, I've got 20 notifications on my screen about tax due dates, and I don't even know where to start to get those paid. So that's usually when they'll come to us. But I wouldn't say we're necessarily competing directly with them. It's more of, we're kind of an outsourced solution, whereas they tend to market as more of a DIY. So we'll get to people that figure out it's not as DIY as they thought.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right. I think we're good here. And folks, I know we didn't get to every single question on here. We've gotten tons and tons of questions here. So I thank you for your patience there. Tyler, thank you so much for your time today and for this conversation. I think this was really, really informative, judging by the slew of questions that have come in and all the compliments that have come in for you as well. I think this is really, really informative for folks who are already processing payroll or thinking about getting into it as well. So we really appreciate it.
Of course, I enjoyed it. Thanks, Dave.
Yep, absolutely. And thanks so much to all of you for joining us today. Again, I'm sorry that we went a little bit over, but hopefully you enjoyed it. I see a lot of you are still sticking around right now, so that's great. Thank you again for joining us, and we'll be sending a follow-up email shortly here along with the recording. I don't think that's going to be within a day or so, but shortly thereafter you'll be able to get a copy of the recording as well if you'd like to go back and listen to it or share it with other people. So thanks again to all of you for joining us today. Thank you to Tyler as well, and hope you have a great rest of the week.